Well, hello, Periscope friends. I just wanted to... Oh, my clock. Oh, well, my clock's going off right now. Just wanted to do an informal discussion today. Hey, Chuck, thanks for joining. The HITSM tweet chat just finished up, and I was lurking and working at the same time. I'm off today, so at home, but was able to... work from home. I do have an electronic record that's cloud-based. I've used both local server-based and cloud-based. And I just wanted to really... Hey, Chuck, glad you're here and delighted to have you as well. I do appreciate it. And M. Loxton, glad to have you join. Sure appreciate you guys joining up, but just basically wanted to have an informal discussion about some of the things I've been doing in the office here in Montana. I'm just going to give you a view outside here. We've had a lot of forest fires. Just if you're interested, you can kind of see how smoky the scenery is out there, but just here at home and taking the day off, and I thought with a little bit of time here and after the chat, some very interesting conversations going on with that tweet chat, but I just wanted to just kind of talk about a few of the things I've been doing here in the office. And Chuck had put a link out earlier in the week, both he and Linda were tweeting earlier this week, and I was just amazed. I think Chuck had written, hey, thank you for joining. Chuck had written an article back in 2000, and I was extremely impressed reading through that article, how I think right he has been. Yeah, thanks, we got your smoke. I bet you do. I think the fires in eastern Washington, Glacier area, have been really, this is probably the worst I've seen in 22 years since I've been here in Montana, but the smoke is definitely thick. But Chuck had written this article, and it's just almost prophetic reading his article that he wrote in 2000, and I'm doing almost essentially most everything he wrote about in that article in 2000, and I've taken a completely different pathway. And just to give a history, I started my internal medicine practice here back in '93. And I have been very reluctant to switch and go gung-ho with the electronic record. I've generally been a computer phobe, and slowly, steadily, I started integrating the computer, and finally, at the end of 2011, I really didn't see any choice other than either not working anymore, is how I viewed it, not working anymore, or adopting the electronic record. So I begrudgingly and out of fear, more so, not out of interest in getting any incentive money, but more out of fear of being penalized with the penalties if I didn't do this. But this whole pathway took me to a very unexpected area. And that is, once I got the electronic record, I was able to do things in steps. So, of course, I did all my own data transfer from the paper world to the electronic world. It was painful. There was nothing easy about it. And it took me 6 to 12 months. But the first 3 to 6 months, I started really seeing some improved efficiencies. And then near the end of that first year, I integrated a CRM, a health CRM, and started integrating e-faxes in and out of the office with that CRM, health CRM, and that just exponentially improved the workflow. And I'll just describe. So penalties work. Yes, they did. They got me. They worked in the sense that they put me in a place where I probably wouldn't be today. But with doing things, integrating things in a stepwise fashion, the electronic record, the health CRM with e-faxing, then I took the jump into the patient portal, and I now have about 815 patients out of about 1,050 actively using their portal. And the other thing I was able to do is I changed my workflow up and my nurse's workflow up. We both have dual monitor desktops, and what I've been able to do is really improve my efficiency in what my nurse can do compared to just several years ago when I used the when I was in the paper world. So can we generalize from Jimmy? Can we generalize from Jimmy, Matt? Oh, probably not. I'm kind of out there in the frontier in Montana here, but so I started thinking about how can I do things a little bit more efficiently. So really my nurse is able to do things maybe 20 years ago that 2.5 employees would have to do because everything's right at her fingertips. So if you think about it, she's got a dual monitor desktop. On her left-hand screen, she's got her electronic record open at all times. And on her right-hand screen, the customer relation management inbox, which I have the same setup. I keep my electronic record on the left screen and the CRM inbox on the right-hand screen. Are you seeing an opportunity to increase patient compliance and their own self-management? I will get there. Yes, I am. And I'll get there, and I'm kind of a long introduction here. So the CRM, we've got the eFaxes in and out, secure messaging, patient portal, and it ties in nicely with the electronic record. So we both see information flowing in and out, and I can edit, I can sign. Actually, from home, I'm able to write letters, sign letters, whether from home or here in or at the office. So the nice thing about being at the office, of course, I can see patients physically, and then I'm in a really close physical workspace with my nurse. So she can say, "Hey, knucklehead, look at your inbox, sign this, that, or the other." So the way we have our physical space allocated or set up, it's very nice because we can really stay in touch that way as well. So I only have 2 exam rooms, and what I call projected EHR sort of came about as an accident of several different spontaneous things that occurred. So it's not that I was like Chuck and Linda back in the early 2000s where these guys, you guys have thought about this, thought straightforward. I just kind of lumbered into this stuff and kind of haphazardly put some of this stuff together, but it's working extremely well. So I went to a conference down in Wyoming, heard of a Chromebook, never heard of a Chromebook, and then on around Christmas time back a couple of years ago, we decided to change how we give each other Christmas gifts. I have 7 other partners at the office, and we decided to increase the amount and just buy for one, draw straws, and it so happened one of my partners drew my name and said, "Hey, what can I get your husband?" And she said, "Hey, have you heard of a Chromebook?" And it was in the right price range. Got it. Long story short, I was able to get that Chromebook, and one day I was reading EKGs on it, just playing around with the features, and my son said, "Dad," he's 13 at the time, said, "Dad, what are you reading EKGs on that?" And it was 11-inch screen, this Chromebook I got for a gift. He said, "What are you doing reading EKGs on that Chromebook? It's too small." So in a second, he mirrored it to a big screen TV, and I had the biggest EKG I'd ever seen in my life, and I thought, the light bulb went off. So we started talking about it, and within several weeks, I went down, got a 24-inch screen TV, got a bigger Chromebook because I tried the 11-inch Chromebook, just too small. So for guys with bifocals, docks, 14-inch minimum on a Chromebook. But what the Chromebook does, and I've got the Chromebook right here, I'll just show you. And the beauty of a Chromebook, there's several features of the Chromebook that I just really find fascinating. First is the cost. I just got this HP. It's got a matte screen. I'd highly recommend not the real shiny screen. It's got an HDMI port over here and the keyboard. This is $250 to $280 depending on where you find it. But you can get this nice little device, and what I've done in the office is that I take this little device and with an HDMI cord, I tried a Chromecast, didn't work as well, and just for not using up bandwidth and stuff at the office, I wanted to use an HDMI cord. So I HDMI cord, it's about a 10-foot cord, and I've got a little extender. I don't have it here, but I've got a little 8-inch extender so I don't wear out the HDMI port on the side. So What I do is when I open up my electronic record, got my Bluetooth keyboard set up so I can type really good. I'm ready for them. And whenever you guys want to comment, I'll just stop and answer questions as I can. But bottom line is, I use this Chromebook in the office like I carry my dual monitor desktop with me. So I use an application called VNC Viewer made for Chrome, encrypted. I bought the encrypted application because it's 256 megabits and I needed to be secure and such. But it also has dual monitored support. So I'm able to take my desktop into each exam room, and then I have a 24-inch TV mounted in each exam room. So all I do is I walk in, greet the patient, plug my Chromebook into the HDMI cord, turn on the TV, and the patient can see exactly what I'm doing on my Chromebook in the electronic record. So what that allows me to do, and I think what's pertinent to your discussion today, I think where we really need to focus, not that I have all the answers, but I think this, and the reason I'm even excited about this is I think we as a community of medical professionals around the entire globe, I think we just need some solutions that really integrate what the patient, doctor, and electronic record can do at a visit. And I've read article after article, and before I started sharing the screen, it felt like I had my nose in the darn computer all the time and was a data entry clerk. And hi, Aaron, how are you doing? I'm glad you could join us, and thank you for hosting the HITSM today. And I was lurking along, didn't comment a whole lot, but I just wanted to read and learn from you guys as much as I could, and appreciate you doing that today. But I think if we can find affordable solutions that are quite easy to implement, are secure, and most of all, I think engage. And I hate to use all these words, but hot word, but really engage the patient in their own electronic record. And the nice thing about the Chromebook, it's got a keyboard, so we can do data entry together, and I can also use the electronic record as a nice showpiece to show their blood pressures, their body mass indexes, their weights graphed out over time. So I've got 4 years of data points, HL7 imported labs, hemoglobin A1Cs, cholesterols, total cholesterol, HDLs, BUNs, creatinines, all ready to be graphed out and demonstrated to the patient. But if I've got my computer or desktop and I'm just only looking at that, I think we're missing a moment where we can really change the electronic record from its primary role as a documenting process instead of an educational process. So I think what this allows me to do, or has for the last year and a half I've been doing it, it allows me to actually transform the electronic record, utilize all this wonderful information that we have, and the information's fed in real time with the CRM that we have. So if I don't have something, I need an office note, a hospital discharge summary, an EKG from another entity elsewhere, I can get that in real time. I just open up the door and say, hey, Don, get that for me. And within minutes, we can get all that information. So if there are any holes in the electronic record, we can fill that rather quickly. But my nurse is obsessive, compulsive good, and most of the time we have all that information ready to go. And I think if we can think differently how we use the electronic record at the interface and use it as an educational tool. And then you can also document. So oftentimes I'll have, during the yearly visit, we'll go over the past medical history. And it may have 15, 20 items. And we go through the past medical history line by line by line together. And the patient may say, no, I had my gallbladder removed in 1978, not 1982. That was my left knee, not my right knee. And I actually am able to correct that. Patient sees it and save that right in front of them. We do the same thing with social history, family history, allergies. I do all my own medication reconciliation. My nurse doesn't even do that. So I can print up. I've got a printer, a laser printer in every exam room, so we can get the medications list exactly right, and then I can print it to either paper and or their portal. So it's just sharing the HR with patient seems highly relevant to share. It is highly relevant. Yes, Chuck, it's highly relevant. And this may be a little controversial, but I think meaningful use is well intended, and I don't want to beat up meaningful use too badly here, but I think we're trying to push the cart with the horse. I think we got it backwards. My own, and the last year and a half, I think, has really demonstrated the truth in this argument. But I think if you can visualize just a 24-inch screen minimum, I'd have at least a 24-inch screen or project the electronic record somehow in the midst with the patient. If you can do that and also have a nice health CRM where you can feed active information, real-time pertinent information, and also the beauty of the electronic record I use is that it's now in the cloud. I upgrade it every so often. So I have all the most recent, up-to-date U.S. Task Force health recommendations, all the vaccine recommendations. So it fine-tunes the electronic record that I use fine-tunes all those recommendations based on the gender, age, and all the diagnosis codes. So we go through and I'll say, hey, you didn't get your PCV13. You got your Pneumovax over a year ago. You're due for your PCV13. Let's do it today because the pop-up will show. Or mammogram, it will remind me to do. This is sort of mimicking the PCMH concept of patient involvement. Yes, but I suspect a lot more affordable, and it's just my nurse and I able to do most of the legwork with a few applications that are absolutely wonderful. So it probably is, but just on a smaller scale, affordable scale for a guy who's trying to run his own office in a small town in Montana. How do you integrate your documentation with other system when patients go to hospital? Excellent question. And that's where the health CRM comes in. And I'm going to push out another argument that I think may be a little controversial. And I don't think the EHR is going to be the solution for interoperability. And I probably not using interoperability in the strictest, most appropriate definition. But I think the health CRMs are going to, at least for the short term and maybe long term, fill in that gap. And it's the health CRM that I use. So when the patient is admitted, we'll get a notification from the hospitalist, and my nurse automatically sends the most recent note, and it is sent electronically to whatever institution needs it, whether it's Dr. A, B, or C, or we only have one major hospital here in the area, or hospitals outside the area. We can do that all electronically with the security of our health CRM. So secure messaging or e-faxing, whatever works best for that other entity on the other end. And I missed that question. I'll have to go back and look. I missed that question that just popped up, and I apologize about that. So when I use interoperability, I think of functional interoperability. And to me, if you can't interoperate with your patient who's sitting there before you and you got your nose stuck in the computer, what's the point in doing all this other stuff? So you have to get, and when I started doing this to try to get people interested, and it didn't take much, I would say to folks, hey, let's just, since I've got my nose stuck in your electronic record here, you might as well have your nose stuck up there on the TV because I'm looking at the same thing. But the other thing that I've found over the last year and a half is I thought the young kids, the 30-year-olds would just be fascinated with the new technology. And what I found was paradoxically the opposite was true. The more complex, difficult, elderly Medicare type patient, I think, has responded to this approach more so than I ever imagined. So it's been an excellent tool to keep things quite organized, easily. It's a wonderful teachable moment when you can do this. And it's just been a lot of fun integrating this over the last year and a half. So, I wish I could say I was like Linda and Chuck I wish you were, I think you're talking about workflow interoperate, which needs more. Absolutely, Chuck. And I'm just going to tell you, when I read your article the other day, I wish I could say I'm as bright as Chuck and Linda and I thought all this stuff through, but I'm not. It's just kind of happenstance. But now that I've been able to put it together and actually see it in live action with patients, it's pretty incredible. And I've been doing this for 22 years. In the last year and a half, well, several years since I integrated the electronic record at the end of November 11, but especially the last year and a half since I've been doing this with the TV, Chromebook in the exam room, it's just been really not only a lot of fun, but some really earth-shattering moments for me as a physician, seeing how people respond to seeing their own electronic record, their own data points in real time. Well, thank you, Chuck, and I'll field some questions if anyone else has any. I'm probably boring everybody. I get excited about this stuff, and I wear my shirt today. I'm Jimmy Vanagan, Jimmy_Vanagan on Twitter. I do have a YouTube site where I've been saving some periscopes. I've got actually David Grayson from New Zealand asked me to interview a patient to get her perspective, and I actually have a YouTube video that's, I think, a little over a half an hour long. How you doing? You must be stuck in San Fran. Thank you for joining, John. So I've got a half an hour video, and David kind of pushed me along. What I never really wanted to do is I don't want to parade my patients because I'm not trying to sell anything. I've gotten involved on Twitter, and it's all I'm trying to do is introduce a concept, an idea that's worked well for me. And if other providers and other folks can integrate part of this solution and it works for them, that's all I want. And when David asked me to interview a patient, I got a little heebie-jeebies inside, but I got brave and I asked this one gal, and she just did a fantastic job. And really, if I could interview 100 of my patients, they'd say a very similar thing. But she's extremely articulate, a retired nurse, and also ran a busy medical office in her past as well. So she was able to give a good perspective there. So if anyone's interested, just go to my Twitter site, Jimmy_Vanagan, and actually her, if you go, I'll just show you, if you go to my site, you can actually go down to here, I'm going to try this and try to show you at the same time. If you click right on here, and you click on this video right here, that's the video I'm talking about, and she does an excellent job. And I've done several others on my YouTube site that talk about this in a little more detail, so if any of you are interested. So, John, I'm excited to hear your, or see your periscopes from Dubai, and I wish you safe traveling, and I'll be really interested in seeing what kind of fun things you're doing over there, and what new things are awaiting here in the future for all of us. Are many of your patients using their own PHR as a result? What I do, yes, to answer your question. And the other thing we've been able to do, and I could talk endlessly about this as well, and the other really fun thing we started doing in the last couple of years. All right, she's probably going to throttle me. But I'll owe you a painting for that. The patient portal's just been another just great improvement in the office. And I think out of 22 years, that's probably the single thing that I've done in the office that patients comment most positively about. And with the patient portal, there are several things that you absolutely have to do to make it successful. Number one, you don't do it for the meaningful use money. It's gonna be absolutely a loser if that's all you're gonna do it for. So you gotta get that notion out of your head. You have to do it because it makes sense and patients love it. So what you have to do, in my opinion, is that you gotta have a nurse manage it. Your nurse has to manage it. She also has to have the schedule, the telephone, the electronic record, and the CRM inbox with all the e-faxes and portal messages going in and out at her fingertips. So if she's managing those portal messages, she can do anything she wants with the scheduling, this, that, and the other, commenting. So she's the nerve center of the office. And what patients like is that instead of calling, getting someone in the front office, and then you get on to voicemail, and then Don tries to call them, then they're at the, store or whatever, you're playing endless phone tag. They've got a direct connection right to her, and they know it. So I've got patients bragging, I haven't called the office in over a year. It feels wonderful because I've got that wonderful portal you guys have. So, but to make it successful, you have to have the nerve center set up like I described, I think, and a nurse that is very obsessive, compulsive good, and computer literate. And she wants, and once she sees what this portal can do for her own workflow and efficiency and improved patient happiness, you've got it made. Because what she does then is she makes sure that every patient has a portal that's interested, and she sets everything up right there in person. We have a nice little handout that walks them through, and then she tells them to start using the portal right away. And there are two ways to, you can either send a message or collect a message. She goes over all that, and she makes sure they're using it as soon as they can. Who abuse that type of access to your practice. And I don't think so. And it's all about education. I've got a few, and I tell Don if it's more than a paragraph or two, it's probably going to require a face-to-face visit. But I explicitly tell them, you don't go onto the portal at 2 a.m. on a Saturday and tell me you're having chest pain. This is only for non-emergent messages, and it's going to be utilized between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. We'll get to you. And you can leave messages after hours, but we're not going to respond until office hours. It's just a matter of education, and patients are wonderful, and they love having that access. So I think if you educate the patients as to what your expectations are, I haven't had anybody abuse that, and if anything, it's just been absolutely wonderful from my perspective, my nurse's perspective, and my patients really like it. So I think it really makes sense. So I think it really gets them interested in their own records. I send a summary. I use voice activated Dragon, and I do a summary, and after each visit I send a summary right to their portal. And so they look over their portal, and then they may look at it with their wife or husband, that day or 2 weeks from then, and go over things. And then if they had any questions, they can portal me with simple questions, or Don, and we get back to them. So it really helps improve efficiency. So I'm a big believer in the portal, in the adoption of the portal system. Now, the other thing that I found amazing charts. Yes, that's the electronic record I do use. And, now that with that, Amazing Charts isn't really intended for, big multi-specialty clinics. It's designed for docs in small offices, less than 10 providers, I think is how they market it, or how they push that message.5 providers in our office. We're kind of a unique setup here in Montana. 5 of us use Amazing Charts. One doc uses eClinical because he started out quite a few years using eClinical, and then a couple are still on paper but are going to convert to Amazing Charts here in the next year, most likely. So it does work very well in a small office setting, but it's not a Cerner, it's not an Epic, it's not a Meditech type of a system. So, but I think what's really cool, about this electronic record is if you tie it in with a health CRM, and the health CRM I use is called UpDocs. Fantastic interplay between those two. And I noticed I got quite a bit more efficient just using electronic record, but once I integrated that health CRM with e-faxing and then the portal, my efficiency just exponentially improved at that point. It's just been a tremendous thing. And then you add the visualization with a second large screen in with the patient, where you can share all this useful, wonderful information. So that gets me back to the whole point of meaningful use. I think meaningful use, instead of either incentivizing us docs with money or the fear of penalizing us if we don't do it, I think if you can get the information to the patient. How did you get the integrated? Did Portal folks do it for free? How did you get the integrated? Did Portal folks do it for free? Integrated. I'm not sure if I understand the question, Chuck. The portal, the Health CRM, if I understand your question, the Health CRM, I pay a monthly fee, and it's under $100 a month. And it's what it does is it allows me to e-fax a certain amount. I'm allotted so many e-faxes. If I go over that amount, then they charge me. And it also has the patient portal, which is secure, HIPAA compliant, encrypted. So I tell my nurse there are really only 4 ways that is acceptable. Integrated between EHR, yes, the Health CRM with the portal and e-faxing and secure messaging is integrated with the electronic record nicely. That plays wonderfully well together. So say a patient in their own handwriting types up a several sentence like, hey doc, I'm having a snuffy nose, blah, 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 can you get me in? Don will copy and paste that, send that to my inbox, and then we save that to the chart. So when the patient comes in 3 days later, when we get them in for an appointment or that day, whatever it should be, our EHR and portal passing data, our EHR and portal, well, in a sense, not HL7 data. It's passing useful, wonderful information, because what will happen is then I can then go to my past note when the patient's there and show them word for word what their message was just earlier from the day or from a few days ago. So, we are passing meaningful, useful data that way. The other nice thing is that if we need to get data outside the office, say another office needs a note, oftentimes my nurse, yes, internist, I'm an internist, oftentimes my nurse will get we didn't get that, well, she can go back, everything's archived for at least 6 years, and she can actually say, we sent this note at 6:07 or 8:07 a.m. On this date, here I have proof of it. So it's a really nice system to have, and it does interplay quite well, and it's very useful, functional, and practical and affordable. And I'm not trying to sell it, I don't work for them, but it just works. And the interplay between those two things work quite well. So, and I think you have to have those things working quite well before you even try any visualization. The other important thing I think that works well with the electronic record that I have is that each individual page that I have, it's just the patient's information only. So what I don't know, I haven't used any other electronic records. Can you actually visualize exactly what I mean when I say workflow interrupt without data? Yeah, absolutely. Because what if I tried to visualize on a 24-inch screen and I've got all kinds of other patient data up there? I don't know how other electronic records work, but if you've got a bunch of other patient information when you're working on a page, this projected EHR, as I call it, wouldn't work. So the really nice thing, and the doc that initially designed the electronic record amazing charts that I use, he is a doc, and it's kind of eerie, but it's almost like, and I don't know if he did or not, but it's almost as if he designed it to visually share with a patient like this, interact, and it works exceptionally well because of the way it shows up on the large screen. And my workflow and the patient's workflow become synonymous. Dr. Burt, yes, he's a great guy. I've never met him, but I've read things, heard things about him. And if you look at all the ratings, doctor ratings for electronic records, it's usually high up, in the top 5% ratings, I think, because it is intuitive. And I'm a computer phobe, like I said, and after I used this electronic record for a day or two, I said, I got to have it. That makes sense. So it's intuitive, easy to use, and I can design my own workflow to a degree with it. I don't have to go through each field and make sure each field's done before I go to the next one. So too bad he's ridden off into this. Yeah, and then Prime Med bought him, I think, bought his company. Amazing Charts. So Amazing Charts and Prime Med are together. And Prime Med, I think, they're very big into education and that sort of thing. And I think that's where this next step leads for me, is this visualization with the education at the visit is just fun to do. The other thing that I do a lot of, and I'll give a shout out to UpToDate. UpToDate's a fantastic resource. How have things changed since the acquisition? I think I haven't really seen a lot of change. I think Amazing Charts continues on, and I think there are hurdles with trying to meet all the different criteria that's necessary for all the meaningful use stuff. So I think in terms of focusing on other things that I think some of the amazing charts users, there's about 10,000 across the company, would like them to focus on. They've been detracted from some other things, but I think they are working on getting some things better solved. But for my needs, works perfectly well. I am not doing MU. I've decided to take the penalty and work on workflow, work on efficiency. And when I tried to do MU with the patients, I'm the type of guy that I need total focus. And I was so distracted trying to get this, that, the other done. I was so focused on doing that task at hand, I couldn't do what I needed to do. So I've elected to take the penalty, no incentives, and just work on things that make sense for me. And if it ever gets to the point where this becomes mandatory, then I have to do something else because I just can't do it. I'm not wired that way. So that's just the way it is. Do you hate the amazing charts as wasting resources? No, they got to do what they got to do. So it's a little frustrating, I think, from an end user that if they could focus on things that could make it even better and allocate those resources, I think that would be a good thing, but it's the environment in which we're in, so they have to do what they have to do. So I don't fault them, and I don't, it's just what they have to do. So just the way it is. So, but I'm trying to control my little medical milieu as much as I can to. Have you seen their EHR? I have, and a little bit, and I don't quite get it, but I haven't really used it at all. I'm so happy with the amazing charts I have. I just, it's kind of like being happy with your wife. I'm not looking elsewhere. So that's the point. They got to do what they got to do, not AC. Yeah, I think you're right, Chuck. So, but no, I'm just happy. It's easy to use. It's affordable, and I'm happy with this product that I use. But I'm not trying to sell it because it's not right for everybody. We've got about, I think, 10,000 users. I've tried to get my own partners to try to adopt the Chromebook TV thing. And, docs are like cats. You can't tell people what to do. You can show them, and if they like something. So I've got a couple of partners. One guy's using a Chromebook. Another guy's intertwined his touchscreen computer with an HDMI cord, although he's got an AVG cord that he uses to a TV. So in one of his rooms, he's kind of doing a pseudo projected EHR. And I've got a couple of other partners that are using an iPad or a tablet for screen sharing. So that's what I think the beauty of medicine is. Everybody's kind of got to find what works for them at the interface with the patient. And I've just found something that I think is quite affordable and very extremely useful, and allows me to do things that I never even dreamed of 3 years ago. Not to change the subject, what kind of stuff have you been scoping? What I'd like to do maybe if I don't drive my wife too crazy with all these scopes is at some point, and maybe later today, I don't know, is scope some of the Great Falls around the area. Lewis and Clark, there's a lot of Lewis and Clark history with the Missouri River through here. There's several. Is your EHR helping you to track conditions like, yes, and I can do all that. And it's really cool. I can do that, run those kinds of things, and do that sort of thing. So that's very helpful. I haven't done a whole lot of it, but that capability is right in there. What I like doing is the graphing out is really cool. So I've got and I never realized what a correlation this is, and you'd think you should, but when you see it over time, it's really cool. But oftentimes you'll see the blood pressure, and the way my electronic record, I've got the systolic blood pressure on a graph and the diastolic blood pressure. Then I can overlay on, say those are black, those show up black, and then I can overlay the weight over the blood pressures. And what's really cool and what patients love to see is when they lose their weight, their blood pressure goes down. It's just so scary how closely that fits often the case. Or, you've got a patient who's just won't even think about a blood pressure medication. But if you can take a ruler and say, this is where you need to be, and look at all your systolic blood pressures. You're 20 points consistently over the last 4 years. We need to get you on something or this may happen. Using not only my voice and my wonderful charm, but using the visual graphics too, probably works more than anything else. When the patient actually sees that stuff, it really clicks. So I think those are the kinds of things, unless you're really visually sharing with the patient, go to waste. I mean, you got to use that stuff. It's there. You put all the data in. Well, doggone it, you got to use it. And patients really do like seeing that sort of thing, in my opinion. There must be something going on there. Are you allowing patients to upload their device data? I tell them if they want anything here, and now this is controversial too, but my stance is that this record is their record. All I am is the caretaker. They can have anything and they can have anything that's here. It's theirs. So if they want it on a CD, if they want me to secure a message to their port, whatever they want, paper, whatever they want, it's theirs. And that's the other thing. You think you give patients all this information, well, they're going to go find a doc that's, smarter, better. In a heartbeat, once they get all that information, they're going to leave you high and dry. But paradoxically, I think the more you give people, the less likely they're going to do that. Not that, I'm worried about that. I'm on my downhill course. I'm going to probably be retiring in 10 years. I'm not looking to grow my practice. I don't want any more patients. So I'm happy where I'm at. But that's just another interesting perception that I've noticed, is that the more you give people, the more or the less likely they are to leave you. So I think, why not? And to me, the doctor, I think I saw Bernadette put a tweet out there where, patients can organize and do, and that's fine if they want to do it, but a lot of my patients wouldn't know how to do that. And what I think one of my responsibilities is to get all this information in organized, easy to read fashion so that if they need it in a heartbeat, they can have it and make sense out of it. Good to be happy where you're at. Yes. What about if they show up in your office with a stack of their health data? If the papers, whatever, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just save that paper chart and then I scan things as I need them. And that's the other thing. When I went from the paper chart world to the electronic world, I had a lot of my partners scan every darn thing and I didn't see any sense in that. So I keep the paper charts for 7 years. Now they're all essentially meaningless. But as I needed things, a colonoscopy report, this, that, or the other, I would scan it in at that point. I'd do the same thing if they brought in their health data. We'd go through it. And if there's anything pertinent, I'd scan it in. Otherwise, I'd keep it on the shelf and then chew it up in 7 years. So that's how I would integrate that, and that's not a problem. But now that I've put everybody to sleep, any other questions? Any other thoughts? Hopefully, haven't alienated too many people with my opinions, but I think, I got to the point where, in the paper world, looking back on things, I was probably, getting close to burnout. And what's been a lot of fun with a lot of these applications, software products that are currently available, it's just been a lot of fun. And I think it kind of shows through, and I think patients like that when you kind of do things like the portal and sharing that, and I hope it shows through, but not that some of this stuff is fun, but I think being energized, I think, can hopefully enhance the patient-doctor relationship. And that's all it is. I'm still old-fashioned. I believe in William Osler. You sit down. What's the major lesson that you learned from this EHR journey? It's the same old stuff rings true as it did for William Osler, and that is you sit down, you look people in the eye, you greet them, you listen to them, and this EHR journey, some folks are saying you check your tweets regarding this, some folks are saying you check your tweets regarding this broadcast. Okay. I'm not sure if I caught that, but what it's taught me is that I think, tell me the truth, you miss patients' charts. Yeah, I do. No, I think what it's taught me is that if you can make the tools as seamless as possible so that you can do the William Osler thing, listen, do the exam, figure things out, and then if you need to refer to a graph, go over the chart, it's seamless. It's like it's not even there, but it is there. So when it becomes a distraction, so that's the whole point I've learned here, is that this stuff can be not only not a distraction, but your biggest ally in terms of enhancing or one of your biggest allies in terms of enhancing the patient-doctor relationship, besides the good old-fashioned stuff. Some folks on the web are apparently tweeting about the video because they don't have the app yet. Uh-oh. All right. Well, I do appreciate you guys spending time on your Friday to do this scope thing, and I'm glad the video worked, and I'm glad the audio worked, and I'm having a ball with this periscoping too. And Chuck, I can't thank you enough for all the tidbits, tips you've given me, and John, scoping and watching your scopes too. It's really fun to see and hear folks. Just check your mentions, okay? And then the other thing is, what I found fascinating, what I envision, I think, Periscope, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago, and Chuck, I think, also agreed, is that I think there's a huge wide open space for Periscope in the medical field, especially with medical education, transmitting ideas, exchanging ideas. We just saw a wonderful conference from the Philippines, and there are 5 docs over there. We are boarding now. Good. Hey, safe travels, and I can't wait to talk to you in Dubai, John, and tell hi to your wife, and have safe travels. But 5 docs over in the Philippines had this absolutely wonderful conference about technology stuff, and I watched him. Actually, my cat got me up in the middle of the night about 1:30. I couldn't stop watching the Periscope. It was actually wonderful stuff. Gia and Iris and Helen and Bone Doc, Remo and Ted. Those 5 guys from the Philippines are so far ahead of the curve, and my cat started scratching at 1:30. I'm glad she did, because I logged on and they were scoping, and they had a series of scopes from this conference in the Philippines halfway around the world. And that right there solidified my thinking about Periscope. They're using it the right way, in my opinion. So I'll let you guys go, and I do appreciate you guys joining up. And any further questions, go ahead and fire away. I'll watch this video again. I'm going to save it to a YouTube, so if you missed any part, problem is when we save it to a YouTube, you'll miss the comments, but I've tried to repeat the comments as they come in, as Chuck has recommended. Very good recommendation. So once again, thank you, Chuck. Thank you, John. Thank you, M. Loxton, and Aaron, I think, joined up, and I missed several others that joined. So thank you all for taking time out of your busy Friday. And I hope if you do have any questions, tweet me, direct message me. And if you take a look at Martha's video on the YouTube video on my site, I think it also adds some additional insight there. So thank you all very much, and you guys have a good rest of Friday. And I'm going to try to stop here. Cheers.